Hello and welcome back to JBCTR. For those of you that are new, my name is Johnny and today I wanted to show you 8 different ways that you can secure your car against OBD theft. I'm looking for a way inside your mind. It's a haze of mysteries. All I see is smoke. Now, I've got to admit, today is absolutely freezing and my car is in a pretty poor state too. But instead of spending the day cleaning the car and getting rid of all the salt and stuff that's on it, I thought I'd make a video that should hopefully be of a bit of use to you guys. So here's a couple of ways of how you can secure your car against OBD theft. And we'll start with the old school ones. So number 1 is OBD relocation. Now, as I understand it, there is legislation in place, which means that manufacturers making new cars like this was once have to have the OBD port in the same location, which I believe is within reach of the driving seat, I think. Happy to be corrected on that one. Anyway, it generally ends up round about here, and of course this car is no different. So as they are always in the same place, one of the most logical things to do to make it more secure is to move it. Now, for slightly older cars than this, as this has a slightly revised OBD design, which we'll get onto in a second, this was the method of choice for a lot of you. So this is simple OBD extender. So if you've got an OBD port that you can just click out of its housing, then the idea is you connect it up to this, cable tie this or put it in a box or something, and then move the other end to wherever you like, really. So that is method 1 if you've got a slightly older car. Now, the next method of securing a slightly older style OBD port, where you can unclip it and remove it from its stock location, is an OBD dummy port. Now, you can pick these up on eBay, or I picked this one up from SCC, so I'll drop a link to that in the description. And essentially, it's really quite easy to install. So you plug one end into your original OEM OBD port, after you've unhooked it, obviously. And then you get a replacement OBD port that you can see here. Now, obviously you put this back into the stock location, so the crims or whoever's accessing it can see that it's a genuine port, kind of. And then, as you can see, I've got an SPS device here. We'll put the ignition on. And then when they plug their own equipment in, they will get a little beep, as you can see. So it's got power, but there is no data transfer. Otherwise you'd be hearing the success chime of the SPS device, as this is just going to sit there and hunt for the ECU all it likes, but there's just power, nothing else. Now, for number 3, this is quite an interesting one. So Ford was slated for releasing this new Fiesta and doing absolutely nothing about the security on it, because obviously the OBD port has got to remain open due to legislation, and it's also in the same place, again, due to legislation. But when making this video, I found out that Ford have actually done something quite cool to enable owners to secure their cars quite easily, and that is to simply remove the OBD port. How about that? To remove the OBD port, simply undo the 2 screws either side of the OBD port and pull the OBD port assembly downwards. Behind, you'll see a different plug that feeds the unit. Simply unplug the OBD port and remove the assembly. The only downside to securing your car in this way is that the whole car doesn't work. Ford, you were so close to giving consumers a super easy way of securing the car. So that means we're back to the good old-fashioned way of trying to protect it. And to do this, I came across an idea that was posted on the STOC forum, actually, of getting a little bit of right-angled aluminium, as you can see here. I picked this up from my local hardware store, and simply making a little L-shaped bracket. So this is how you make one of these. First up, you'll need to fully remove the OBD unit as described previously. Next, grab your set square and measure the distance between the centre of the 2 bolts. For reference, they were 68mm apart. On your L-shaped aluminium, measure out your desired length of your OBD protector and mark where you'd like to make your cut. I went with 90mm as it's long enough to span the bolts without the bolt holes being too close to the edge. Clamp your aluminium safely and then use a hacksaw to cut through the metal on your marker. You'll likely have sharp edges where you've cut, so now is a good opportunity to file down those edges and get rid of anything too sharp. And this is your first opportunity for a test fit. If you are happy, mark where the bolt holes need to be drilled. I ended up using the OBD port as a guide, but of course you can measure them out too. When you've marked your holes, clamp down your aluminium securely and get drilling. You can now double check your holes are drilled in the right place against the OBD assembly, and also check the plate fits in the car. If, like me, you need to make adjustments to the holes you've drilled, simply clamp the piece down and use a larger drill bit. To install your newly protected OBD port, firstly hook up the OBD assembly to the wiring loom, install the plate you've just built, and then offer the OBD assembly up underneath. Now you can do up the bolts, which is a little more tricky as you can't see them now, but that's half the point, right? At this point, if you'd like to be super security conscious, you can also change the nuts to security nuts, if that's your thing. Once installed, it's not too noticeable at all. I'd suggest painting it black if you have the time, but on a day-to-day basis, you can't see it anyway. And now for the next one, we need to go around to the passenger side to access the fuse box. And within the fuse box is a fuse destined only for the OBD port. In the MK8 Fiesta ST, it's fuse 10. So all you've got to do is simply remove it and the OBD port just won't work at all. So that is the fuse removed, and if we go onto the driver's side, we can test the OBD port's inactivity by using the SPS device. So put the ignition on, there's the SPS device, plug it in, and nothing. There's a dodo, car still works fine, it's not a bad option. Now, next up is more of a deterrent against car theft in general. And this is also one of the most popular methods of protecting your car, and that is a disc lock. Now, obviously other steering locks are available, but this is my lock of choice as it completely encompasses the whole wheel, which means they can't cut the wheel, and it also rotates around the wheel as well. And I've been using this for maybe 4 years or so now, so I'm fairly used to it being around and being in the car, and yeah, I can't complain at all, and it's obviously the most visual deterrent that we'll discuss today. If you're worried about your wheel getting dented, you can purchase one of these, which is like a wheel protector thing, but in my experience they don't really do an awful lot, so I mean, take it or leave it, it doesn't really make much difference. The only thing I would say is when you put this on your wheel, make sure you put it that way up or that way up, and don't put the lock on the top. So although it probably looks best to have the lock on the top, you will get a bit of an indent on the top of your wheel because the whole weight of the disc lock is on like a little indent on the top. If you have it like that, the weight of the disc lock is spread along this nice flat surface that you can see at the top. So there's a recommendation for using a disc lock. Now, up until this point, I have been using the Revo SPS device as a simple means of telling you whether or not the OBD port is active and transferring data. But the SPS device in itself is actually a viable security means. So let me show you how it works. Now, I have covered the Revo SPS device in my last video, but as it is a pretty cool method of securing a car, I thought I'd mention it in this one too. So in order to use it, you simply put your ignition on. For the purpose of the demonstration, I'll put the engine on as well, you'll see what I mean. So first up, you select your anti-theft mode on your device. So for me, that's number 1. Plug the device in until you get a happy tune, like so. Now you can hear that the revs have dropped to 500 RPM, so you can't move the car anywhere on the clutch. And of course, the throttle doesn't work at all. So that's anti-theft mode by Revo, but worth bearing in mind, it does only work if you are running Revo software. Now, to put it back to its normal self, go back to the fuel mode that you want to be running, plug the device in, get the happy tune, and the car is back to normal again. Now, as with any car on the road, there are quite a selection of aftermarket alarms and trackers and that kind of stuff. So a popular one for the Fiesta ST is the Auto Watch Ghost system, which I don't have fitted to the car. But essentially you have to set up a PIN code using the buttons on your steering wheel. So when you get in the car, you put in your PIN, but the idea of it being a ghost is that you can't see that it's installed, and the car just won't start unless you put in the right combination of buttons which are on your steering wheel. I quite like that idea, I must admit. But then in addition to that, you've also got Clifford and that kind of stuff. So if that's your thing, then we can go down the aftermarket route too, but that's got to be one of the most expensive ways of securing your car. And there's one more method that I nearly forgot, and that is this. So this is an exterior junction box, which I picked up for a couple of quid. I then sawed a hole in the side of it to allow for some cables. And then if you have the old school removable type of OBD ports, you can simply unclip it, put the OBD port in your newly found box, and then screw it back together again. Of course, you can change the screws for security type screws and that kind of stuff to make it a bit more secure, or you can even go for an even more substantial box than this, maybe a modified master key box. I saw this in my local hardware store whilst I was picking up the L-shaped bracket. But yeah, so just use your imagination really. That's probably the easiest way to secure your car. So there you have it. There are 8 different ways to secure your car, I think. I wasn't really counting. I'm gonna go with 8. Anyway, as you saw, there's plenty of different ways of just using your imagination and not having to spend too much money in order to make your car a little bit more difficult to steal. And it's actually quite fun thinking up these little things. So hopefully this video has sparked your imagination with different ways as to how you can secure your car. And if you want to borrow some of my techniques, then feel free to go ahead. And if you think up any of your own, feel free to share them in the comment section below, because that will help the rest of the community. And if you found this video useful, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of me and my Fiesta, feel free to subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. There goes a sight from my soul.